still have little kids riding bikes by themselves on their block. It's safest street to skip in the city. I never locked my front door after.
Yeah, or not that. This morning I woke up, walked outside, and the entire street is full of cop cars. Entire street, and there's crime scene tape around the apartment building across the street from us. And I don't know if you saw the news today, but it made it like KTLA parked out there, and ABC7 and Telemundo, and I'm like, what is going on? And I read later that they found like a woman. Someone called in that a woman was injured in the apartment. Police went, saw her essentially bleeding on the floor, forced their way in, and she was dead. So they found the guy who called it in, found the guy who was in the apartment at the time, arrested both of them. They're sitting out there all day long waiting for a search warrant to search the rest of the building. And now, then, in the afternoon, my wife sends me a photo and hazmat's out there. And it's like, oh, wait, they think I'm like I was across the street from our house. I've got a 2-year-old. I've got a 5-month-old. I'm like, and this is a property. You know the lodge that's been getting all those complaints, and now the city's like, filing suit against them? The neighbors have been calling for months and months, like over a year, saying they're struggling.
Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, if you please can do roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Present.
David.
Benavides.
So sorry.
Present. No problem.
Vincent Sarmiento.
He is on his way, so we're going to move forward. We do have a quorum. Great. Next, we're moving towards public comment. Members of the public are allowed 3 minutes to speak on agenda items or matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. And we have Gilad Salmon that wishes to speak to us.
Good evening. So I just want to be clear that I'm not here on behalf of the Environment and Transportation Commission, so I just want to put that out there. Just here as a resident, there are 2 items that are relevant to me that I just wanted to comment on. The first is the fiber optic gigabit Santa Ana. This came up a couple years ago, maybe a year ago. Council Member Benavides, you were on this committee at that time, and it seems like it's picking up steam again. So I just wanted to comment that, a lot of times when these fiber installations happen, there's like a charge to the homeowner to actually connect from the fiber to the premises. That's like $250. That's something that, me and my household would be able to afford, and we'd jump on that ASAP. But there's also just a ton of multifamily apartments, a ton of new developments. And I just want to make sure that as we're moving forward with it, hiring a consultant or whatever we do, that we think about making sure that folks who can't afford those fees will be able to pay for it. There's something that we could do where new developments in the city would be required to install dark fiber so that when this infrastructure comes in front of their property, it's ready to go. Whether it's Heritage Village or the new small lot ordinance, there's some new development happening, and we should make sure that those developments have the infrastructure to connect to this so that when we invest in this, it's ready to go. So just wanted to put that out there. And then the other one is an item that's not on your agenda, but something that's being talked about a lot, which is the Amazon HQ2. Amazon's looking for a new headquarters, and while I don't believe that we should be trying to woo them with tax incentives, I think that there are a few sites around Santa Ana that already make sense from an economic development standpoint. There are sites that are adjacent to the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center that make a lot of sense. And so I hear that there's been some staff work on preparing a proposal, but I just want to put it out there that as someone who works for a technology company as a software engineer, and also knowing other folks who work for software companies here in Santa Ana. Like one is, we have a person who lives near the train station who works for Silence, a $1 billion company that's pre-IPO in Irvine. We have the folks here, so I just want to make sure that as staff gets ready to put out a proposal to a tech company, that we're at least engaging with the residents who work for tech companies to get their input. So just wanted to put that out there, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Gilad. So next, we are going to do the approval of the minutes from the May 15, 2017 meeting. I entertain a motion.
Move the item.
Great. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, motion carries. We're going to take some stuff out of order, and hopefully the Councilman Sarmiento does join us. And I just got a text message, so let's just see what he says here. On my way, so he's on his way. And so let's start with item number 4, which is the business license review schedule and plan. I've asked for this presentation to come before us, and one of the reasons, just so it's hard to not violate the Brown Act, and specifically when we're all sitting on this committee. So just give some context to Councilman Benavides and why this item was brought up. But I know he's a big supporter of small business and economic development. Is that a couple of residents have been contacting not only myself, but I think other council members as it pertains to the businesses that they have at home businesses, and the amount they're having to pay for business licenses. And so I brought that to the attention of our interim city manager, and she's brought that up to Francisco and his staff and others. And I think Councilman Solorio has brought in this issue up as well. And so wanted to bring some full context here to this committee and see what kind of next steps we actually can take, because I do think that we need to be fair and how we move forward, and we want to be supporters of all entrepreneurs at all levels. And so I know we haven't taken a look at this in quite some time, and so it's always important for us to go back and look at policies and fees and see how can we actually help promote these kinds of businesses within our community and others that wish to go into businesses like this. Francisco?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Martinez. Originally, we were prepared to just address the home-based businesses, but the city manager wanted us to do a more comprehensive analysis to be provided to this committee. So what we decided to do is outline what the next steps will be in terms of providing that comprehensive analysis that will also include the small business component. So what we're proposing to do is really compare the San Andreas business license tax structure, the rate structure, really as it relates to other cities, not only in terms of whether or not the business license tax is a major component of the city's overall general tax base, and and compare that with other cities that do not really have the business license tax as a great component of the general tax base. But in addition to that, what we propose to do is also meet with the Chamber of Commerce and these small groups, these small basically business collaborative groups, just to hear their concerns as we go through this study, to incorporate them in terms of analysis. We also want to get it's called the Cosmon study, which actually tries to take everything, all these apples and oranges, and basically provide a level, basically comprehensive approach in terms of evaluating the application of the business license tax to the various businesses. So we're going to be utilizing that in order to kind of basically to make it like apples to apples and provide that to you. We intend then to prepare a report and really go back to the Chamber of Commerce. Now, mind you, we had been working with the Chamber of Commerce under the previous city manager while he was here. So we were working at a means by which to address some of their concerns, some of their small business concerns. So what we propose to do is really go back to them and basically talk again, close the loop with them in terms of the strategies that potentially can be looked at, and then bring that entire presentation, this entire analysis back to this committee for evaluation and review and actually comment and recommendations.
The other thing that I would like to add, and I know there was discussion and we had put a moratorium where the Airbnb concept, and I know Anaheim took that off the table, and I remember we were having that fluid discussion here. I want to say it was about a year plus ago when we had both sides of the aisle come and speak to us. I'm not sure what positions we've taken, where is planning at in that process, but again, we've been receiving emails and how is that going to come to play when we're looking at economic development, we're looking at small business. As you look at a lot of our residents, they're trying to do what they possibly can to have different businesses, whether it's a home business or it's now, using some of their accessory dwellings as, or their full house for that Airbnb concept. I just not sure if you know or you're aware, but I'm not sure where we're at. As I recall, we had a discussion about a year plus ago, and I think we set some moratorium, but I have not brought that up again because I just got an email about it, and so now I'm wanting to bring that up since we're having this kind of conversation.
I don't recall it, but let me ask my treasury manager, Will Holt, in terms of what he recalls in terms of the Airbnb. Did we do anything with the business license component on Airbnb that you recall?
No, we did not. No, we did not. An Airbnb that tries to function as an Airbnb runs into our moratorium. We have had people that have had residential rental properties that have flirted with trying to be an Airbnb. Before the moratorium, they wanted to act like an Airbnb. Some of them actually did. And they had to be reminded that they were licensed simply as a residential rental property. And so as of right now, those that were licensed as residential rental properties are operating exactly that way. So the problem has not arisen again.
Do you know how many of those rental properties we actually have in the city? Do you know that number?
We're also at one point or the other flirting with our
Airbnb? Currently what we have on the books now is that are legal to operate under what you just discussed.
Okay, well, we license all the way down to individual condominiums that are rented out. So the number's quite large, approximately 8,000.
Okay, great. Good to know. Thank you. Any questions here on the dais?
Just going back, I'm glad that we're looking at just going to study, analyze how we how we tax businesses and do the licenses. One of the things that, to Councilwoman or Mayor Pro Tem's point, some of the home-based businesses, at times I recall even for myself when I was doing real estate full time and got a license that the city of Santa Ana requires licenses for realtors to do business within the city. It's not cheap, and so the brokerage that a realtor is with pays a business license, and then every individual realtor as well is required to. And so it's just one of those things where other cities I don't think require them as well, and it can be a good little nugget that one who's just trying to do some business. Again, whether it be in that case, real estate or some other type of, parent at home, trying to bring in a little bit of income to be able to supplement or support their family. It can be a sizable fee, especially if it's not a big lucrative business. If it's something that's a smaller, again, I'm thinking some of these folks that are trying to work, do a little bit of business from home, want to do legitimately, and want to be able to go through all of the requirements that we might have. So it would be interesting to be able to look at how we compare and make sure that we're doing things.
What we're also going to do, because I know some of the frustration that when businesses come in, that they first start on the planning side. So by the time they get to the business, and there's a fee there's the occupation permit, and so by the time they get to business license, they become very frustrated. So what we're hoping to do at the same time is look at the whole process, the context in which businesses come forth, because there could be opportunities, maybe not on the business license side, but maybe even looking at the other side. I can't comment on the planning and building side per se. I don't want to do that. But I think in context, there could be opportunities where we could lessen the burden on the home business or small businesses on either side, if you will.
So we can learn from lessons like this, Francisco, and maybe I'm not sure how we communicate. Sometimes we still work in silos, but something that we should consider is that maybe every 3 months or maybe every quarter, that depending on the businesses that actually, came to the city to get a business license, that we have a recap meeting with them and maybe bring 6 to 12 of them and ask them how was the process and learn. They can say, here are the pros, here are the cons, and this is how we can make the process better. I think it's important for us, and I learned this as I was at the League of Cities, and the keynote speaker, he said something that was very powerful to me, and something just very simple, and how we need to start looking at how we actually do business in the city. And I'm trying to get to this here, so bear with me, but I think it's something that we should consider. Where is it at?
Maybe Mayor Pro Tem,
Go ahead,
while
yes.
you pull that up, one of the notes that I had here that I neglected to mention, as you're going out, you mentioned, Francisco, going out to the Chamber of Commerce. I would encourage us as well to do as we're trying to study and gather information from other cities, to put out through Nixle or any other approach you might have, email blasts, and to solicit online, do an online survey to encourage feedback from some folks who do operate, do some work from home, and what their experience has been, what their, maybe what, anyway, a variety of different questions, if they do businesses in other cities or just a number of different things. Again, sometimes it just would be interesting. I know for one, I remember going through just my own experience. I was taken aback by that experience of just doing some work. I happened to, again, have my home address, getting some mail there. I forget exactly how it all came about, and then I ended up getting some back license. Anyway, it became very convoluted, and then I tried to understand the whole rate and how it all. It's not easy. At least for my, maybe I'm not the smartest guy. Maybe I need to do a little bit of get a finance degree or something and figure out how to get a business license. But I remember it was really confusing, and so it would be very helpful, I think, to be able to have just your average person be able to provide some input via survey, so that we can, your department can have that.
I think that's a good
feedback.
idea, and we'll incorporate that as we do this analysis. And it may be as simple as those that are coming through the process now, potentially, and capture those individuals.
It's a great opportunity, but he also said that cities should move from going into 3 shifts, from calling them citizens to calling them customers, from calling them taxpayers to participants, calling them from clients to creators, right? And really just changing this entire shift that, when we're dealing with our constituents, that, we have to look at them in a different way and at all levels, specifically when they're interacting within government, because I think we all want to have a good customer service experience. So they're not, we shouldn't look upon them as taxpayers or, or just residents paying their tax, but go a little extra and beyond, what their expectations are. They don't expect it from government, is what he said. And so trying to transform that mentality, I know, is not an easy one, because we've always been focused on tradition and how governments always function. But I believe that if we start capturing and really hearing from our residents, and Gail, I mentioned it earlier in regards to, residents that are in the tech industry, we have them here. How can we utilize them? How can we utilize the residents that are really coming out here to get these home business license, or these realtors, and bring them into a room and gather what their experience is, so that we can make a better collective impact on how to improve our services. Councilman Sarmiento?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I got here a little late, so I missed some of the discussion, but I sort of gleaned that we're talking about just doing an analysis and reviewing this. When's the last time we did that? If at all.
So to answer, we've done something less comprehensive than what we're talking about here. I would say about 7 years ago, and then about 5 years before that. The difference here is the last time we zero-summed, the last time we went completely down to basics and said, what's the distribution of our business? Let's consider the philosophy of our business license tax, because it helps to have one, and we do. was way back in 1987. And I know this because it was the first project I undertook for the city of Santa Ana. And we looked at business licensing ordinances and rates and rate structures and the philosophy, the legal philosophy behind how these things were imposed throughout the entire state. And it was a 6-month process. Things have changed. The economy has changed. Councilmember Michelle Martinez is correct, Mayor Pro Tem, I should say, is correct that things aren't the same. So one of the issues we're running into, where we're starting to rub against the reality of the changed economy, is the gig economy. The fact that we have so many really proficient people taking advantage of being able to work from home, or in some instances, almost that's their choice. And so that needs to be looked at freshly. I can tell you that as recently as 2013, as part of the ordinance that allowed the Business Improvement District to be brought back, we did try, within the limited scope that we had, to adjust certain things. And we did introduce some additional elements of choice. And so we tried to recognize certain underlying realities, but it wasn't the opportunity that I perceive we have now. And so we made some improvements, but it does need to be looked at again, and it needs to be looked at in the totality of the entire structure, how our structure compares with other cities in our county, how it compares with other major cities that look like us. And so that's what we're undertaking here.
Got it. Well, it's funny, the geek economy. Okay, so I hope nobody's offended by that. Gilad, I hope you're not offended by that.
Okay, did I say geek? I meant gig. I meant gig.
Oh,
It might have come out, it's late in my day. It might have come out. Okay.
I figured you wouldn't be offended by it.
Right.
Well, another part of that is just also the shared economy, right? So,
Yes,
I
true.
think we see a lot of that with just,
Uber, Lyft,
Uber,
all
all the
these
other
sort of
ways
things.
that people are augmenting their, revenue streams. And so we have to incorporate, especially because, and one of the things I guess I wanted to just impress upon the staff that's going to be looking at this is it's hard to find a community that's similar to ours.
It's true.
It really is. I mean, so if we compare ourselves to Long Beach or we compare ourselves to Oakland, we compare ourselves to Anaheim, it's not the same fit. We have people that aren't even connected to Wi-Fi. They're not connected, through social media. And we make these assumptions thinking, hey, everybody's, they're going to get notice of this. But look, we're still dealing with folks that are undocumented, folks that are, trying to make a living, that, are monolingual Spanish speakers, and they're not even underbanked, they're unbanked, right?
They're cash. Yes, sir.
So we're dealing with these assumptions and major variables. We're going to make decisions based upon that. And look, we're probably ignoring 50 to 60% of our residents. So that's my fear, is that, we can do a study of those that'll respond, but how deep are we going to dig to be genuine? If we want to get something from those who will respond and who are connected, look, that's not difficult to do. And I bet your findings are going to say, look, lower the rate, make it easier for us, make it simpler for us. But that's not going to be a real accurate picture of who we are. So that's just the reality. I mean, those findings are going to be flawed. They're going to be skewed because it's going to ignore a whole group of folks who we tried to help the other night at a meeting when we were talking about the cooperatives, right? And these are folks who, are making a living any way they can. They're not traditional ways of earning a living, but we're trying to make sure that they're legitimized enough that they're not going to be scared out of their practice, right? So that's where I would say we have a very undefinable, a hard-to-reach population.
And I assure you we're going to try to address that to the best of our ability. I mean, sometimes you just have to, as you're doing here, take that 10,000-foot view, understand that there is a large hidden economy that would surface, that does want to be legitimate, that does want to take care of their obligations if circumstances can be such that it's viable for them. And we do get that. And this is the first opportunity for us to be able to address it. In the past, like I said, we're working from a structure that was really well defined. Major effort was made back in 1987. This is not the 1987
Right.
economy. To Councilmember Benavides' point about real estate agents and how they work and brokerages, and there are a number of cities that treat them differently from us, and that's something we could come at and look at zero sum, with a fresh point of view, and that's what Francisco has directed me to do, and that's what we will do, and that's what we will present.
Well, I appreciate that because I know in 2005, 2006, there was a drill down study. So to the point about the cash businesses, there's a lot of money there, right? There's a lot of non-quantified money and resources there that if we were to tap into it well and we could support that, look, that's part of the economy that we really, haven't been able to define. So I would just say, look, if you want it to be a good study, a study that's accurate, a study that's going to help us, then we're going to have to be sort of non-conventional, right? And do that. And while we're at it, just one last thing is, these things on fee studies and capturing, this sort of undefined market. Let's try to see about changing the culture as well when when these folks are being addressed or when they're coming to the counter. And I think to David's point, we just have to not be so rigid. Those models have changed, and we have to be a little bit more welcoming to them. Yeah, we should treat them as clients because, well, I don't even know if they should be treated as clients. This is we're supposed to be providing these folks a service because they're paying for this service, right? So we should be rendering these and looking at this more of a private sector model and saying, look, these guys are investing. They're supposed to be getting some return on the investment that they make through their taxes. So that's the mindset that has to change because we really treat it sometimes as we're doing folks a favor. And that's not the way it should be. And I've gone to some communities that are really welcoming and some communities that are really harsh. And so that doesn't cost us a nickel, So if we can change that culture, I think we get a lot of good faith and a lot of goodwill from our folks.
To address Mayor Pro Tem's comment, we do and have always, since I've been here, referred to them and treated them as customers. And when they come to see us, I know it's difficult because Francisco is correct. If they come in and they're a small business, they're paying over $400 on their certificate of occupancy, bang, it's upfront cost. If they're a home business, it's a $270, I'm going to call it round up $77 fee for that. And so they're kind of bruised by the time they get to business license tax. And we try to, hold them gently and say, we're going to work with you to find the category that you pay the least. We're going to, have a dialogue with you to see more about what you're doing, because generally the more we learn, the better we can help analyze and reduce their tax burden. We only want to receive the taxes that are the minimum taxes that are required. We do a lot of that, but people are a little bit raw by the time they get to us. And what they remember is, before I even got the business license, I was, $400+ in the hole, or $277 in the hole, and it's very difficult. Anything on top of that is a real burden, and sometimes people they just they kind of lose it a little bit, but they remember the last person they spoke to, and unfortunately, we're at the end of that process, not at the beginning of it.
Definitely understand, Mr. Holt. The other just thing that I would just talk about is just equity, because I know Gila wants to talk about this subject and bring him back up. So just come on up. Is just on the equity component and being equitable as well, is that, it's important for us to realize, to Councilman Sarmiento's point, that our communities are very different. And when you look at the median income of Santa Ana, it's not the same as Anaheim, or is it the same with Irvine, but we tend to want to benchmark to other cities. We're not those other cities. And I always give the comparison when we're talking about bargaining units and giving folks, we're not Long Beach. We don't have a port. We don't have an airport, right, where they have other, we're not we don't have a convention center like Anaheim, and we certainly don't have Disneyland. We certainly don't have our own utilities, right? So they generate revenue differently than our city. And so the same thing here, when you look at the medium household income in this community, it's much different. And so when we're looking at these fees, those fees need to be relatable to the market here within our own, business sector and residents, because people will say, well, people don't want to do business in Santa Ana. That's not a lie when we're over 31,000 small businesses here in this community. Obviously, there's a market here. People want to come here. We just got to create a different experience. We have to make sure that we promote good small business practices for our residents here in this community that actually live here, versus those that are outside wanting to come do business, bring their shop here because they understand that there's a really great market here. So let's just continue to think about that. Gila?
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate you allowing me to come up again. So I went through this process. So one comment, which is that, the idea that you have to go one place for the home occupancy and another for the business license, that's not treating people like customers. That's treating them like, well, it's just not, right? Like if I wanted that person's business, I would create a sort of counter where they could take care of both things at the same time and make that a package that I sold to someone. And on that, there's one actionable thing around that, which is that the home occupancy permit actually says on there, the application, if you rent, that you have to get the approval from the person you're renting from, which is just an unnecessary level of burden. If I'm renting a room or if I'm renting an apartment from someone, why would I need to go back to the landlord and say, oh, can you sign this thing so that I can operate, as a independent software developer, for instance? So I would ask that you look at that as part of the study to remove that requirement. And then the second thing, I didn't realize we were going to be talking about Airbnb, but it's not clear if they're allowed or not, but they are all over the city. And Airbnb actually provides localities the opportunity to tax, to charge the bed tax within the actual Airbnb program, so that when someone books an Airbnb in our city, we're not having to go to the homeowner and get them to pay that bed tax. They're actually paying that to Airbnb, and then Airbnb is remitting that to the city. And plenty of other cities, whether it's San Francisco or Berkeley or wherever, are doing that, and it's an additional source of revenue, right? So if the Airbnb folks are here, like if the apartments are here and getting rented out, let's make sure that they're, being taxed on the same level as hotel beds are. So I appreciate it.
Valid points. That's why we brought the issue up, and so hopefully we'll be able to have more conversations.
We'll have more of a conversation about that, yes.
Correct. Great. So thank you. If there's no more questions, we're going to go off to back to number 2, which is the update on the fiber optic utility infrastructure in Gigabyte Santa Ana. William?
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. I just wanted to provide you with a brief or oral update on where we're at with fiber. A couple of years ago, it seemed like there was a synergistic opportunity to master plan and look into the financial feasibility of providing fiber not only to for the city's use, but also to businesses and ultimately to residents. We felt that that was a good time because the SMART program was beginning to catch wind, and we wanted to take advantage of the paving opportunities to install fiber ahead of the paving, so that that would be coordinated and it would go hand in hand. At the time, we were also looking into the purchasing of streetlights from Edison, and so there was also another technological opportunity for wireless communication. So what happened last April, not this past April, April of 2016, we received a number of proposals to master plan and look into the financial feasibility of fiber. We could not find the funding to pay for those master planning services. I think the proposals came in between $100,000 and $200,000. The other hiccup was that we weren't sure where we were going with the street lighting. We knew that there was a street lighting option to purchase by the city, but it wasn't solid yet. So that was another issue. And so at this time, I think that we're looking into fiber again. We have a proposal that we floated over to Jack for his comments and input. There are opportunities to maybe even combine fiber with wireless options. So this RFP is advertised as of last week. So we're hoping to bring back the proposals to this committee and eventually to the council. I think that we also have a better funding option where we're getting collaboration between Jack and Public Works. So that's where we're at. We're hoping to bring back proposals by the end of the year, and hopefully we can master plan and look at the financial feasibility of fiber really in 2 steps. One of them is to connect the government and the downtown, where it makes a lot of financial sense, and use the fiber, extend those through the commercial corridors in the city, and then from that we can then maybe do a follow-up phase where we can provide fiber to residents where it's a really low cost or no cost to connect. Something that Jalad brought up was that there could be a cost to, for residents to connect, but if we can make this financially sustainable, perhaps that cost could be minimized. Last thing I wanted to bring up is that I'll be doing a follow-up presentation on the street lighting. There is a possibility also to expand the wireless or the communication technology. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be just fiber. It could be wireless. I don't know enough about the technology. I don't know if Jack wants to comment as to where we're at with the wireless options. So that really concludes my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions.
So I do, William, on the fiber optics. I know there was conversations, and a few months ago I had the opportunity to meet with Mike Metzler and Mike Weissman, and they had told me that they had spoken to the prior city manager and public works director about a year and a half or so ago about their opportunity to partner up with the city as it pertains to fiber optics. When they provided that presentation to me, I was fully excited and like, why can't we have public-private partnerships? They're ready to go. I'm not sure what happened to that. I know they were circling back with my colleagues to figure out, what are some next steps. I know you now have an RFP out, but if we have a willing partner that's already here, I think we should look at that opportunity, and specifically if they're willing to put some capital up front here. The second thing that I would like to ask is that, we should never be deterred because we don't have the funding. When was that going to come to the council and possibly go out, for some funding, whether it's through, doing a bond or others. I think at this moment in time when we're at, fiber optics is extremely vital. It is the backbone. We cannot succeed. We hear from the business community here in the civic center in the downtown, that the service that they're getting is mediocre at best. Right? And so from an economic perspective, and my colleagues keep on talking, they want to attract economic development. This is the number one tool to attract economic development, talking about that we're a gig city, that we have fiber optics. Big businesses are going to want to come here. Tech businesses are going to want to come here, but they're not going to want to come here if we don't have the backbone system. When we already have small businesses here in the downtown that are already frustrated, do you imagine how are we going to attract those big players from coming here to Santa Ana? So I think it's important for us, and it's vital for us to make a commitment. But we have to paint that narrative, and that narrative of the economic development one is one that I think my colleagues would be supportive of if we needed to go out and get some seed money to make this happen, or partner up with the private sector that is willing to step up. And obviously, my conversations with Mike Weissman, he was certainly willing to do that. I don't know where he's at today, but I just wanted to bring that up and realize that we do have a moment in time, and I believe that moment in time is now. Council members?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So a couple questions I have is one with regard to time frame with this RFP and when we anticipate coming back for decision, and the other is actually Mayor Pro Tem addressed, and I believe what the business representative person and people and companies she referenced was looking at doing a wireless option to be able to, along the same lines of getting the city to be a gigabit city, but not necessarily focusing just on fiber. I think it was more of a wireless option. I believe, what I understand, they may have talked to the city. There didn't seem to be much traction there. They're working now, I believe, with the school district, who was here the last time that we had this item on the agenda. So that's my other follow-up question. One is time frame with regard to RFP, and the other is whether we're in conversation with the school district, because they also have numerous facilities throughout the city, and they're looking at simultaneously talking about this exact conversation. So I would hope that we're working in tandem, even when it comes to the RFP, that there was conversation, and if they're going down that same route, that we're leveraging each other's resources and all of the energy that we're putting into improving infrastructure within the city, that we would be doing it together rather than either in competition or just not helping each other out. At the end of the day, we want the city to advance. I would imagine we'd want to do it with the other largest municipal entity within the city. So those are my two questions: time frame, and then the SASG conversation and the wireless discussion.
The intent was for the master plan and the financial feasibility to include some of the financial institutions, obviously the schools, but to really focus in on the downtown and the backbone, which would be the main quarters of the city, which would be the backbone to the system. There's also probably some overlap and competing technologies with wireless. So both of the fiber and the wireless, I think they need to be considered together. And again, I don't know enough about the technology. I know that Jack has commented on our RFP, and maybe he can provide some information.
Great. Jack?
Yes. The RFP has two components. One is to help develop a master plan of what the city needs to do to move forward and get to where we want to get to. The other piece was to have this consultant that develops the master plan also serve as an advisor to us to help us evaluate some of these public-private partnership proposals so that we're not taken advantage of, and that it does end up getting us to where we want to go to. And also look at all the different assets we have to offer. We have conduit, we have the street lights, we have the school district, we have a lot of different players and assets that we could bring to the table. We want to make sure that we're using them to the best we can to get the most for it. We just don't want a vendor that's going to come in and say, give us a bunch of money, borrow money, and we'll build a network for you. We want to make sure we're getting what we want. In terms of the school district, they were looking at a cellular solution, and their approach was to use a private cellular network to connect their students to their back-end data center. It was a great solution for the school district because it gets their students a connection using their internet bandwidth where they get the E-rate, good rates for internet. The downside to it for a city is it only works if you have a specific chip in a specific laptop that the school district gives you. You can't connect your iPad to it, so it's a very private network. So it really wouldn't be the solution we're looking for businesses and for just everyday, citizens that don't have a student in that school. So, and the school district has put that project on hold, and maybe that can come up in the school committee there. But at this point, they're no longer pursuing that. It's on hold at this time.
Vince, you have any questions? I have a follow-up. I had met with a company, I forget their name. I don't know if it's Newcastle or something of the castle, where the small cell sites, look, it's federal law. We don't know what's happening at the state level with this. We opposed it, but obviously we all know that telecommunications has a lot of power in Sacramento, and that's going to pass. Here, they already have installed over 150 of these devices. They have fiber optics, and so when I met with them, I said, how can we partner up to use some of your fiber optics? And they were more than willing. There were some issues as it pertains to contracts, the city's willingness to come to the table 100%. It was a first of my knowledge until I met with them. And so I would like to see how, again, using public-private partnerships, they're already here in our city. They provided me a map, and they have a huge network of fiber optics. How can we jump on and partner with them? Of course, they are not going to make that map public, for security purposes, but they shared that with me just to highlight, look, this is what we're doing. We're going to be putting 100 more of these in your city, and there's nothing that the city can do about it. So we want to partner. How can we figure out this, this agreement? And so I'm not sure if you all have conversations about this. I brought it up to our city attorney, our interim city manager. I have yet to hear anything after I met with them a month ago. And so are we having conversations with folks like that? They already have a system in place that we can partner up with?
Yes, we've had conversations with, that's Crown Castle, is that particular
What's it
vendor?
called?
Crown Castle.
Crown Castle. I called them Newcastle. It's a beer.
So Crown Castle and...
It's also, okay.
Yeah. So,
I knew it was something castle.
So several of these vendors do. I mean, there are vendors out there, third-party vendors that have that own fiber within the streets here. Crown Castle, they have a lot, mostly up on lines, poles. Wilcon, who was purchased recently, I think by Crown Castle, has a lot in the underground. Verizon has some underground, and they provide that fiber for lease. Any, if where they have fiber, any business or government can lease it from them. They have in the past worked out deals with municipalities in exchange for a master service agreement to give them some of the access to the fiber. This SB 649, though, does away with that. Those in-kind deals also goes away with
Should have
this
signed up
particular
early,
thing.
folks. We missed the.
Well, even if you did, they can go
Yeah.
away.
Oh,
So
yeah.
according to attorneys, they say those no longer will be allowed. So even if we did sign up, we would probably lose those capabilities. So if that goes through, unfortunately, it's a negative for the city. But there are opportunities, like William mentioned, with the street lights, or even with the small cell sites. Because as these companies put up more small cell sites, they need to connect those small cells with fiber to their backbone. And if we create ordinances where they have, dig once policies, where if they're going to be laying fiber, let's throw in some fiber of our own, we could take advantage of pooling resources and having everybody dig once and everybody throw in their fiber at the
Fiber,
same
exactly.
time. So it could really benefit the city if we do it right to make sure that as these small sites go up, even though we can't get free fiber, even though we can't get revenue for leasing the poles as much, maybe we can take advantage of getting some conduit in, some fiber in that we can utilize in our fiber network.
So, really briefly on SB 649, it did pass in the legislature. We have heard conflicting things on whether or not the governor will actually sign it. There's a camp that says that he will, and there's another camp that says that he won't. So, we think it actually will probably be a last day, October 15th type of situation as far as SB 649 goes. In either scenario, we have had communications with our attorney's office in terms of our legal options and some different scenarios where the city may still be able to protect some of its rights. But for the most part, the way that the industry is looking, it does look like the elements of SB 649 will go into effect. I believe there's now 13 states that have similar type provisions. Obviously, it's being carried by the communications industry, AT&T being the biggest supporter. But 13 states, I believe, already have it, and I believe in the next year, another 12 or so have it on their dockets for their individual states to support it. So this is definitely the way that the industry is going. Whether SB 649 goes in this year, next year, or the following, we have had conversations with different carriers, Verizon and others, to have similar conversations, and actually most of the carriers are offering less than what SB 649 allows. So that's now going to be the new benchmark. So it's really in how we get creative with our assets and our infrastructure in order to get the most value for the citizens.
Great, thank you for that update. William?
Yeah, just wanted to leave you with one last thought. The street lighting presentation, it'll be obvious that there's some opportunities there. But the other is to consider that we have a very robust traffic signal conduit network that already exists in the ground. And so it's just a matter of master planning, and perhaps we can take advantage of those conduits that already exist, and then we can get new fiber pulled into there at a very cost-efficient way.
If we please can just also, based on this conversation, provide an update to the entire city council with the timeline and where we're at would be greatly appreciated for us on this particular subject, because I think it's an important one, and we all should be getting this same kind of information and what are those next steps for us to move forward. And with that, if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and go to the last, which is the update on the purchase of the SCE-owned LED streetlights.
We currently own 3,300 streetlights in the city, and Edison owns gone to council with the, thanks. We've gone to council with the option to purchase 7,800 streetlights. 4,000 would remain Edison-owned, and that's because they're on Edison power poles that have high power wiring on it, so they're not quite available yet. We're still going to work on those in the
Will
future.
we be still able to put sensors on those if we wanted to capture information, data? Have we had that conversation with them in the future?
We have not had that conversation.
No.
Can we have that conversation with them? Thank you.
Yes. And this is, I know the map is not telling, but the city is covered, 95% is covered by a street lighting network. The benefits of LED lights is that there is improved visibility. The LED lamps provide improved lighting by about 25%. The lighting is improved. Braking reaction times, we have information that that says that brake reaction time improves by 25%. We also have improved and reduced maintenance costs. The most recent information we have on our LED lamps is that the warranties have gone up. We were working on warranties that were up to 12 years. The latest warranty is up to 15 years, so that's a great deal. The environment is improved by LED by just consuming less energy, and ultimately, the costs. We have the potential benefit of reducing the street lighting costs by almost $1 million a year, and so.
That's just infrastructure or lighting period by using LED, using the sun versus electricity from the poles.
We would still be consuming electricity, but the LED lights would consume so much less electricity that.
Do we know what that is? Have we done an analysis on the current lights that we have that are on LED so that we can just show, what the return on investment is? I think it's important to highlight that information. So as we move forward in trying to purchase these other lights, and if we're going to need financing, we have a story to tell.
We do. That's all of those wattage consumptions and the cost-benefit analysis has been done. And so some of the benefits and capabilities of purchasing the street lights is that we could have Wi-Fi capability. We could install 7-pin connectors so that we have dimmable controls, immediate outage notifications. We could also measure individual street light consumption of electricity wirelessly. We could also have some audiovisual capability. We can also use it for our AMI, so we could read our water meter billing using the wireless system that we could have with the street lights. And we can also engage with the police for emergency notifications using that system. These are capabilities. The capabilities would be there with a lamp upgrade, and so long as we have a 7-pin connector, all of these capabilities are available.
Can you turn them on and off as well?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And we would know which lights are on or off.
and off. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we would know if there's an outage.
Yeah. So, for example, at home, I have one of those Wi-Fi connectors, and so when I was in Europe, I was able to schedule my light to turn on at 7:30 p.m. and then turn off at 6 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it actually works, because I didn't think it was going to work, and it actually does work. It's pretty amazing. So, the capabilities are, I was impressed. So,
Yeah.
you guys have those at home?
No.
They're awesome.
We should get those. Just a quick question.
I'm a
though.
nerd.
Sure.
The police notification, what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
In case there's an emergency, whether it's a fire or a police emergency, we can have the street lights start flashing on and off so that the police could have an indication as to where the emergency might be. And that's just one. I think there are other options available for emergency and police notifications. So the bottom line is that what we want to do is we want to use the savings to purchase and upgrade the system. but we can't get the savings unless we purchase and upgrade the system. So they go hand in hand. So earlier this year, we provided the council with an agreement to purchase the street lights with Edison. The city is not committed to the purchase, but if we get the financing, once we have the agreement reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission and they give us the green light, then it's going to be really the time that the go, no go time where we need the council to approve the financing so that we can purchase and upgrade the streetlights. That's going to be happening fairly soon, probably in about another 60 days. Just to go through what kind of savings we're talking about. Currently, in the general fund, we set aside about $2.4 million for the entire street lighting budget. That includes operation, energy costs, staffing, the whole thing, $2.4 million. We did engage with a third party through the finance agency to verify what costs are we talking about. Is there truly savings there? So we did come up with $968,800 of actual savings. That's a third party consultant that looked into our books, looked into what the costs are, and so that's their number. So we're working off of that number. And so the proposed financing that we have is the purchase cost per the current city Edison agreement is about $3.8 million. Now, I'm not providing an exact number because the street light numbers will be verified once we purchase the street light and we put it onto the city's invoicing. We will verify that inventory exchange at that point in time. So there could be a few more street lights or a few less street lights. So the other cost is there's a transaction cost, and so all of those costs will be verified, but we're fairly sure that the total dollar value that we will pay Edison is not going to exceed $3.8 million. The other cost is an LED conversion cost. So we have to purchase the LED lamps and we have to install them. We do have proposals from 4 different firms. We are currently evaluating 6 different manufacturers of LED lamps. And so we're really confident that for the purchase of the LED lamps and the installation, we will not exceed $2 million. As a matter of fact, we have a proposal that's under $1.9 million, and that's to purchase the lamps and to install them.
Before I lose my train of thought, you mentioned here better environment, reduce carbon footprint by removing 1,850 metric tons emissions, equivalent to removing 385 cars. I sit on the MSRC committee, the Clean Technology Committee on behalf of the Southern California Association of Governments. As we have our new program, maybe we should consider applying for some of those funds. And so we're having that conversation. I actually have an MSR meeting on Thursday, which I'm going to take to see if we actually qualify. But if we do, there are matching funds. And so again, I think it's important and it behooves us to try to leverage as much funding as we possibly can. And you have me, I'm there representing all of the Southern California region, but you have me there and Santa Ana to help push and do that, but you all have to apply. And so I want to bring that to your attention so that I can then go push. So on Thursday, I'm going to take this to them and say, hey, does this qualify? If so, let's get Santa Ana started. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. So we have the purchase cost of $3.8 million. We have the LED purchase of the lamps and installation of the lamps at no more than $2 million. So the total to purchase and upgrade the system is $5.8 million. We do have a contingency cost of $290,000, as we do in most public works contracts. And we wanted to also set aside $550,000 for some miscellaneous improvements and to maintain certain system operations. So the total amount to be financed would be just over $6.6 million. So in running those numbers, financing $6.6 million, if we finance that over 10 years, that cost would be $773,000 per year. So well within the savings of $968,000. So the bottom line is that if we finance $6.6 million and we have the $773,000 per year debt, we would result with an end-of-year cash flow, positive cash flow of $145,000. This is after meeting all of the costs related to the street lighting system. So this is pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, it makes sense to purchase the system. After 10 years, after the debt service is paid off, we would then have those extra $700,000+ available to the city for other upgrades. We would also use the $145,000 end of year balance to use that to leverage financing maybe some of the underlit areas that the city might have. So those options would always be available to the city, and so we can come up with the underlit areas in the city. We can come up with some cost estimates and come up with a priority list. But all of that could be done for the $145,000 end of year balance.
Quick question for you. So the agreement's already been entered into by both parties. Edison's already, this is a consummated deal. For whatever reason, I had thought Edison backed out, or they were trying to, rethink this, and so that's no longer an issue.
We were able to resolve those differences. Is that Edison wanted to get compensated for additional transfer, so that they wanted to increase the transfer costs. So for the 7,800 lights, they wanted an additional
About 50,000
$50,000
on top of it.
on top of what we had already agreed to transfer. We went with the city attorney. We went back to the agreement, and we found in the agreement that the agreement gives us the flexibility to pay that extra $50,000 that they want. We're also continuing to negotiate with them to possibly not pay the $50,000. But what Edison wanted us to do is to go back to the council with a new agreement or amend the agreement, and to us it didn't make sense. If the agreement already had that flexibility, it didn't make sense. And plus, well, if they want to negotiate the price up, well, how about we negotiate the price down? So they realized that we were at an impasse, and their attorneys and our attorneys talked, and we realized that the flexibility that they're looking for is already accounted for in the existing agreement.
Okay, so we're at status quo where we were before.
Right.
All right.
And so the timeline is that we are looking to confirm the feasibility and finance plan. That's what we're doing now. Based on the feedback that we get from you, I will be coordinating, Fred will be coordinating with Fran, so that we can get the financing in place, so that we can use that savings to leverage the purchase price of $3.8 million, and then the purchase of the lamps and the installation of the lamps, so we can finance that whole deal. We're hoping that maybe we can go to the city council with the finalization of the finance plan in November, and then we can begin to do the streetlight conversions from Edison to the city between December of 2017 and June of 2018. So that's pretty much the timeline.
So I have a question for you, maybe two. One, when we do move forward with the conversion, currently now, based on the lights that the city currently owns now, 4,000 or so, who's responsible for maintaining them? Is it city in-house, or are we contracting out? For example, when a light goes out, we need, we get somebody, hey, this light's not working. Who do we send out?
For the lights that are currently city-owned?
Yes.
For the city-owned streetlights, it's a combination. For changing out light bulbs and stuff, we have in-house staff that can do it as soon as possible. And then for knockdowns, because we don't have the equipment to remove the poles and put new poles up, we contract that with Aegis.
And I only ask that because now we're going to be moving forward possibly with converting all these lights. So that's a lot of assets that we're going to have, and we need to rethink and how many employees are we going to need. And so are those figures in these figures here? And if not, what does that translate to into dollars? Because this is a lot of light poles that we are now, if move forward with the financing, that we're going to be responsible for. Who's going to maintain them? Again, we may use a third party. We may use someone internally to the light bulbs. But I always give this example of Seattle when, residents will call, and ultimately, for many respects, if we don't own the light, we're like, well, that's Edison's responsibility, right? So Edison has to go and do it. Well, guess what? Well, residents call, it's the city of Santa Ana, right? So we want to make sure that customer service is number one again, that we're prepared and ready and able to meet the needs of our residents in the community when lights go out, because that is quite often in certain neighborhoods, in particular in Councilman Benavides, sometimes in even Councilman Sarmiento. I really haven't heard much in the downtown area, but there are times where they do go out, and people are like, who do I call? What do I call? And our response right now, for the most part, is Edison, right? So that's going to change. So if you all can answer, do we have a plan of attack of how we're going to be able to address that, how we're going to be able to address the calls that come in, and how they're in the queue and they get fixed.
Yeah, to answer your question very briefly, yes, all of those costs have been considered. Okay. We've used our experience in how many knockdowns we're averaging per year, so we factored those costs in. The other is that we do have a transition plan, as the streetlight conversion timeline indicates, from December of 2017 to June of 2018. We would be transferring approximately 1,000 streetlights every month.
Wow.
And so we would be working closely for that transition, but the costs for knockdowns are already considered. I don't know if you have anything to add, Tyrone, to that?
The biggest thing, because of what we're doing, we're upgrading the system, the LEDs, and they're going to be guaranteed. We're looking at least 12, possibly 15 years.
Yeah.
So the replacement of lights and changing them out, that's going to be covered already. So our in-house staff should be more than able to handle that. And our biggest challenge would be the amount of knockdowns. And because Edison really can't tell us what knockdowns they have in the city, we don't know. So I think on average with our 4,000 lights, we're averaging maybe 3 to 6 a year, just depending on the year. So I would say it's probably what we have already budgeted in there would be sufficient to handle it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Questions, Nabi?
Yeah, just a quick question. If you can help me understand, on the savings slide, show that we currently have general fund budgeted $2.4 million. The non-participating cost that would be saved is the 1.4, slightly above the 1.4. What does that represent, the non-participating costs?
Those are the street lights that are already owned by the city, so we have ongoing costs for that. And then we also have the street lights that we're not going to purchase that are going to remain Edison owned, and of course we have ongoing costs for that. And then we also have our own personnel costs to cover. We do have some staffing and some equipment in-house, and so that's what the non-participating costs of $1.4 million is. So we've already factored all that out. We've also factored it in, how much are those new street lights that we're going to upgrade to LED, how much do those cost per month? What's the energy cost for that? And then what are the maintenance costs? They should be minimal, because the LED lights are warranted for 15 years, but in case we have some knockdowns. So we've already accounted for those costs. Again, what I wanted to emphasize is that we did have a third party that the finance agency brought in so that they could verify what all these figures are. And the figure, or the savings of $968,800 is the verified figure that they gave us independently.
Great. Any more questions, Councilman Sarmiento? Great. Thank you all for the presentation. Greatly appreciate it. At this time, we're going to be moving towards staff comments.
There's no staff comments for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, committee member comments. Councilman Sarmiento?
None.
Councilman Benavides?
None tonight, Mayor.
Great. I do have a couple, just one that I would like for us to look at next in regards to pensions and PARs. I know we have a minimal amount of dollars and where we're at with PARs. I'd like us to get an update where we're at. I actually ran into them at the League of Cities, those booths, they get you. And I said that I would bring the conversation back here and see what we can do as we continue to wanting to contribute, make sure that we reduce our liability. So if we could get an update, then possibly bringing them back as well. And see how we can move forward in the next budget cycle.
And this is specific to PARs, not PERS, correct?
PARs, correct. Yep. And then the second one is, as we're talking about infrastructure, water and transportation in particular, I'm wanting to make sure as we move forward that with anything that's dealing with water, as you all know, I sit on the Metropolitan Water District, Councilman Sarmiento sits on the Orange County Water District, and there are a lot of grant opportunities that are before us, and how can we capture, in particular, as we look at, we're no longer able to use potable water, in our medians, and we've had many residents and ETAC members talk about this issue. What can we do to be proactive, to go out and talk to our lobbyists, talking to myself or Councilman Sarmiento, and how we can leverage some funds and bring back here to help address some of the issues that we're dealing with in our medians, since we can't use potable water. And certainly we haven't invested in that infrastructure, but we have opportunities. And so what are those opportunities we can leverage? And then the last thing is SB1. We have to submit our list of projects by October. I know that I had Fred sent that list out to, when he emailed it to me, to everyone else. It's going to have to be by resolution, SB1, the list of projects. When is the staff going to put that together? Before you all put that together, I think it would be appropriate for you all to send to the council in a memo to make sure that we're all in agreement. I know it's recommendations from the staff, but what we don't want to happen is that we get up there 11th hour, we got to submit that list to Sacramento, and we don't get there on time because we're not in agreement with the projects. So I just want to make sure that there's consistency, that we sent that out to the council, make sure that we're all on the same page before we move forward. And those are just my comments. And with that, yes, Councilman Benavides?
Sorry about this, but for the next meeting, I do want to request one of the areas of emphasis of this committee is economic development. I would like for us to be able to be brought up to speed on what initiatives, just economic development department or team within the city. I know we added another person within the last budget to see if we've been able to fill that position, and just overall our strategy, our approach to business attraction, business retention. I would be interested in hearing from some of our economic development staff on where we are, what we have in pipe, what just our vision in that area, so that council knows how to best support those efforts and be able to contribute to ideas as well.
Good points. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.